The Going to College Education Podcast from the Irish Independent in association with Quality and Qualifications Ireland, QQI, promoting quality and accountability in Irish education and training.
And you're very welcome along to the Irish Independent and independent.ie Going to College podcast 2020. This is the second of 4 podcasts being recorded this month, which will cover the Leaving Cert results, CAO offers, and the college experience during COVID. I'm your host, Sinead Ryan, and each time I'll be joined by an expert panel as we navigate what can be complex and confusing at the best of times, never mind this particular year, which is obviously more challenging for everybody concerned. Now, you can download each podcast from independent.ie, and whether you're a student, a parent, or an education specialist, hopefully there'll be some insights and wisdom for everybody. And don't forget, of course, that the Irish Independent is running the National Parents Council helpline, which is open now. There are career guidance counsellors available to talk to parents or students, and they're available on 1800 265 165, and I'll give out that number at the end of this podcast. Now, today, well, it's Offers Day, and students are finding out what course they have secured and making their choices about acceptance. Did you get what you wanted? Were you disappointed? And what can you do now? Well, joining me today, Aoife Walsh, Guidance Counsellor, John Walsh, Education Columnist with the Irish Independent, and Colette Harrison, Awards and Certification Manager with QQI. You are all very welcome along, folks. I know it's been a very, very busy day for everybody, so let's get right to it. John, I'll start with you if I can. What have we learned from today's offers?
Quite a lot. I mean, as expected, the points jumped for a very wide range of courses. I mean, can I mention, say, in Trinity, 80% of courses saw increases, an average of 27 points. In UCD, we had a slightly lower number of courses. 90% of their courses saw an increase in points required. And for the first time, last year we had one course that went over 600 points. This year we've had 6 courses that went over 600 points as the minimum entry needed on the first round. So that's quite a big increase. It means there are a lot of very, very bright students vying for places. This year, some of them obviously who were presenting their Leaving Cert from last year or previous years. There are some spectacular increases of up to 80 points, but there's some very interesting statistics from the CAO though. Of those who got their level 8 offers, 4 out of 5 got their top 3 choices. Of those who got their levels 7, 6 courses, 90% got or more than 90% got their top 3 choices. And one other interesting point worth making is that arts in UCD has come down as a very popular course, but the biggest entry now is into arts in Maynooth, which is where the points have gone up, I think, just by 2 points, not a very big increase.
Okay, and I did read on the initial kind of commentary that went out around it, that there were a number of courses, particularly it seems in TCD and UCD, John, where courses went over 600 points. Now, you know, that's a very rare occurrence. Usually it's reserved for the likes of medicine. But in fact, that's going to be a high bar for lots of other things.
It is, yeah. Medicine, of course, is complicated by the fact that you take into account the results from HPAT as well. So those figures are always a little bit higher. I mean, they're of 735 or of that area. But for straightforward leaving certificate grades, leaving out HPAT or other entrance tests, say for art or whatever. Yes, you're right, there are 6 courses. I mean, the 4 in Trinity, which topped the 600 point mark, were Management Science and Information Systems, 613 points, which is up 24. Dental Science, which will come as a disappointment to some applicants, need a minimum of 613 points. That's up 23. Law and Business, 602.
Very popular courses.
Law and Political Science. Yeah. They are, yes, yeah. I mean, it means that, as I said, there are a lot of students with very, very good points who will be disappointed.
Okay. Well, now, Aoife, welcome along to this podcast. Give us the science bit about when offers must be accepted by. Is there going to be a second round? What about students who didn't get their first place offer?
Okay, so the offers were released today. I think everyone is still reeling a little bit from the large increases that we have experienced in some courses. So the first thing I would say to students is to just pause and take your time with your acceptance or your non-acceptance of your offer. You do have until Wednesday to accept it. So at least, take a little minute over the weekend to stop and think and talk to families and talk to friends and make sure that you're accepting something that you really want rather than maybe impulse accepting something because it's what you've got today. So you have until Wednesday then to accept, and if you choose not to accept, then you don't have to do anything. You don't have to inform the CAO, you just let it lapse. Then the second round offers may come out in about a week after that. The big question that we get today is, if I am hoping for something on the second round, should I accept my place that I've been offered this morning? Does that mean I'll still get a second round offer? And the answer is, of course, yes. You need to look at your offer that you've got today as if that's all that's going to come, and make a decision based on the offer that's in front of you, whether you want to do that course or you do not want to do that course. If you accept the offer and you are due a higher preference offer in the next round, that will come anyway, even if you've already accepted your offer today. And then you'll be able to decide, well, will I stick with the course that I accepted on round 1, or would I prefer this round 2 offer?
It's always a risk, isn't it? Because, there's that element of, will there be people not taking up their places? And if I hang around, maybe I'll get lucky. And of course, then you've all the offers that maybe weren't on your first list, your 8 list, if you like, and it's on the second list. So do you advocate, Aoife, is it always just go with your heart to some extent? Like, what is it you like to do first and foremost?
Yeah, I think you really need to think about your end goal here. And okay, maybe the offer that you've received today is not your first preference, and maybe it's not the college you wanted, or it's not the exact route you wanted. But if that course gets you to where you want to be, and if that's a course that you would enjoy and that you would engage in and that you would do well out of, then maybe you should accept it, because there's lots of different ways to get to the end point, and most of us end up at an end point that we haven't even foreseen at this stage. So look at the course that you've been offered in its own right, rather than, well, this was my 5th or my 6th or my 4th, or my first. Judge it on its own merits. And if you think you want to do that course, you can see where it's going to lead you, then go ahead and accept it.
Okay, that's good advice. So Colette, I'll come to you then, because if somebody did get, say, their 3rd or 4th choice and they hadn't really considered it, they had kind of put it down in anticipation of getting their first choice with all the hubris that being 18 brings, where can they find now more information before next Wednesday about that course and how accredited it is and what it involves and curricula and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think the advantage of the systems now is there's very good information out there on websites about courses. And you're quite right. People often number a whole load of courses down on the assumption they're not going to get them, odd as it sounds. And then when they do, they're left saying, oh, I'm not so sure about that, or it's not in a part of the country I wanted to go. And I think actually that's a good time, not only just to look at that particular course, but maybe to say, look, I might think of other options here. And I think Aoife's point is very relevant. There are lots of routes to where you want to go. So if you want to do business and you didn't get the right course, maybe you should think of doing another route. And that is around perhaps looking at your further education college, doing a qualification there and accessing college next year. So it shouldn't be about jumping on your 3rd or 4th round offer. I think it's probably, or your choice offer, it's probably an option of looking what else is around the corner. Should I be looking at some other route? And there are many to get to your goal at the end.
Yeah, and of course, one of those routes is looking for this bridge, maybe into the level 8 framework. You mightn't have got it this time round, but there are the so-called backdoor courses. And are they worth maybe pursuing? Or you might get kids kind of saying, look, I'll maybe do a PLC for a year rather than repeat. Is that sometimes a route into what you had planned to do?
Absolutely, because I think you're seeing more and more of that as being a valuable route for people. It's a big decision to make to go to college, and the whole country gets excited about the Leaving Cert and CAO and so on. And it is right, judge a pause. I mean, again, quoting Aoife, you're right, judge a pause, have a think here, discuss it with your family and your guardians and so on. Sometimes it might be the right choice for you to go to your local further education college. You're doing a course. I think it's important to emphasize here, though, it's a course leading to a qualification in its own right. They're courses that are level 5 on the National Framework of Qualifications. So you're gaining a qualifications anyway. It's not just passing the time. And you're giving yourself the option then of going on to a university course, or maybe discovering, that wasn't really the field I was interested in. I think I'm better suited to another field. And it broadens your horizons, but you still come away with a qualification, a QQI qualification at level 5 on the framework. And I think that's important to realise, that you're actually gaining something by that, as well as opening up further opportunities for you to look next year at different routes and different courses.
Indeed, and Aoife was there talking about taking a breathing space until Wednesday, but in fact that's equivalent to taking a breathing space for a year and letting yourself decide. I'm always conscious of the places that, say, like the States, where their education system is profoundly ridiculously expensive and elitist. However, they do have that college experience for a year or two before they decide what it is that they want to do, and there's something to be said for that, isn't there?
Yeah, and it isn't, I know you used the word, it's breathing space for college, but it is also gaining you something. And I think the difficulty sometimes is parents are very tuned in to CAO and think, oh my gosh, he didn't get the first offer, therefore what will we do with him? That generally is the conversations we have in QQI with parents. And that's why it's important to look at the other options that are actually going to gain you something as well. You're going to have a qualification. It might allow you to move in a totally different direction. You might decide, well, I've done that. I think I'll go now and do an apprenticeship in financial services or accounting or
sure.
sales and marketing.
Okay. We'll come back and talk about apprenticeships in a minute, because I think it's a really, really important topic and all undervalued a lot of the times. John, can I just come back to you for a moment in terms of the points, because I think the group that a lot of us would be feeling sorry for are the people who deferred from last year. So how are they going to be doing today? What are they looking at in terms of, for those courses, particularly where they jumped in points? Is there any possibility that they can get them appealed or get an upgrade, or are they just being thrown to the wolves?
Yeah. Well, the ones I feel particularly sorry for are those who actually had the points last year for the course of their choice, but didn't accept and defer it. Because if they had deferred, they would have got the place this year. But for some reason they thought, and with hindsight, not perhaps very wisely, that they'd have more than enough points for this year.
Just wanted to gap
I really
year,
feel
maybe.
sorry for those people.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but they could have deferred the course, which means they would be automatically entitled to it this year. A lot of the other students said no, they'll just take a gap year and then put their name into and number into the hat this year, and assume they get a place. And I think a lot of them will. Given that there are so many extra places, the minister's talking about 6,300 extra places this year. That's a very big increase. So I think the government has done enough to avert the kind of rows that have caused fierce problems in the UK for admissions officers. But I think one of the consequences of creating all these additional places in higher education, and if they're all taken up, if we're going to have an intake of almost 50,000 into higher education, it means that we will have less going into further education and perhaps fewer going into the area that we all think should be encouraged, apprenticeships. That's one of the downsides of emphasising higher education, because in this case, there's a political imperative to create additional places, but I think it will come at the expense of further education and apprenticeships in particular.
Yeah, and of course, let's not forget that when you're providing extra places, they have to be funded, not only for this year, but potentially for 4 years. And is that going to cause problems down the line, John, as points go on for 21, 22, 23? Is everything going to be affected by this now for the next few years?
Yeah, there will be an effect next year that deserves some consideration as well. That's the students who are now in 6th year. Their education has been disrupted the last several months. In 5th year, when they do their Leaving Cert, and hopefully the Leaving Cert will be held in the normal circumstances next year, but when they get their results in the normal way, they will be competing with some students from this year who are taking a gap year and will apply to the CAO next year with higher points because they will have got higher calculated grades. So there will be knock-on effects again next year, and unintended consequences that will have to be worked through. But overall, I think the government has probably done enough to avert a huge backlash that's happened in the UK.
Right, okay. And Aoife, can I just ask you a point on that then? If somebody's upset that they didn't get either what they wanted or didn't get any offer at all, just because they happen to pick these courses that have hiked in value, what are their options now? As I understand it, there is an appeals process, but of course there's no papers to recheck.
Yes. So they have a couple of options. I'm not saying that they're wonderful options, but they have a couple of options. So the first thing I would do if I'm disappointed, especially if it's one of those very high points courses, on Monday, you will be able to see the grade that your teacher or your school has assigned you. So you will be able to see by logging into your portal, your student portal where you got your Leaving Cert results, if the teacher has given you a higher grade than the department has actually given you in the end of the process. And you have the option of making an appeal then. Now the appeal is only going to check that the information that was transferred from the school to the department was entered correctly and there's no administrative errors along the way. They're not going to go back and check to see whether the teacher has given you the correct grade or not, and they're not going to go back and check to see if you deserve to have an algorithm applied to your grade or not. But it is still worth making that appeal because mistakes do happen. And you could be looking at a grade on your calculated grades right now that shouldn't be there. So do make the appeal. But then the next, I suppose, step is to see if you get anything in the second round. Again, for many courses, that's not very likely to happen. Not all courses go to the second round. But if you are entitled to an offer on the second round, you will receive that offer irrespective of whether you've accepted an offer today or this week. And then the next option you have is to consider if you would like to, if you feel that the calculated grades you were awarded were not fair and you would have preferred to take the exam, you can take an exam in November for the Leaving Cert in those subjects. And students can choose whether they're going to sit an exam in one subject or two subjects or all of their subjects. If they choose to do just one or two, they can add those subjects. If they get an upgrade, they can combine those exam results with their calculated grades, and that could increase their points and mean that they are actually now entitled to an offer for a course that they've missed out on today.
Okay, all right. So there are options for them. I mean, it's a bit of pity that appeal only relates to the administrative side or the sums, the adding up, which you hope teachers will get right, if anybody. So I think there might be, some confusion around that. So thanks for clearing that up, Aoife. Colette, can I come to you? You mentioned apprenticeships earlier, so did John. I'm a graduate of the apprenticeship model myself, so I'm a huge fan of it. And I know that the new minister, Simon Harris, has put a lot of money and effort behind apprenticeships. And we spoke last time on the podcast about the Irish mammy syndrome, where everybody has to go to university, but they don't. And that earning while you're learning thing is really, a very valuable method of getting qualified. Tell us about how people can find out more about that. The accreditation particularly, I think that's maybe what people are worried about.
Yeah, I agree with you. Accreditation and framework levels, people have got very familiar now with talking about, I have my level 8 or I have my level 7. And that's a good thing, that general overall awareness of accreditation. So there's a very broad range of apprenticeships on offer. So for example, you have the accounting technicians, for example, or for anyone who wishes to move along in the accountancy world and working and earning and learning at the same time. Now a well-established apprenticeship. There's also an apprenticeship in cybersecurity, to give you an example. People often don't think that they're options, and in sales and marketing. So all of those information is available they're done through colleges, they're available through the Solus website. You'll get a lot of information there. And I think for people, and we have a lot of people on those courses, is to bear in mind you're achieving a qualification, mostly at level 6 on the National Framework of Qualifications, but there are level 7 and 8 apprenticeships available as well. And it'll also give you access to college later on if you wish to go further. It's all about the route you want to take. And there's very much a conversation around lifelong learning. So what you're doing now as you leave school might not be where you'll end up in 10 years' time. Your paths could be quite different, and you're looking all the time to maximize those opportunities. So I think apprenticeship is a very valuable one. It's a long way from the trades now. So the trades are very valuable. Still a lot of people going into trades, traditional trade apprenticeships, but there are many others that could give you access to different kind of careers that you mightn't have thought possible.
Indeed, and also earn some money at a time maybe when our unemployment rate is up and jobs are harder to come by, and you can earn some cash over the year. And they're all graded, aren't they, Colette? So you earn more in second year than in first year, and as your qualifications go up, you can earn a bit.
And you get your qualification. And again, I'm back to this point. It's a qualification you're getting. You're not just coming out having served your time, if you like, that old expression that some of us would remember back in the day, but you actually have a qualification, and using that qualification, then you can move on to add to it, to specialize and so on. But it is a qualification on the national framework of qualifications. QQI make those qualifications. We're the national awarding body for all of further education in Ireland. So we make all those qualifications, and always love doing them for the apprenticeship side of things.
Okay, all right. And of course, the valuable experience, which an awful lot of employers would nearly prefer to the university degree. All right. John, a toughie now, if you're going into the Leaving Cert cycle for next year or the year after, what kind of courses should you be keeping an eye on for 2021? Is this going to spin out over another couple of years?
I think that's a good question. But if you're entering the Leaving Cert cycle, think about it, you'll be effectively out of the workforce for 3-4 years at least if you go on to college, and who knows what kind of jobs will be available in 4 or 5 years' time. The way technology is accelerating through the workplace, it's very hard to know, but it obviously is essential to look at courses that give you a broad range of skills, particularly the soft skills that employers are looking for, and to be pretty open, but also to go for your heart's desire, wherever that brings you. It seems to be the best advice for students who will be filling in their CAO form in a few months' time.
For all the students out there, I know you don't want to hear old people like us telling you what you should be thinking and what you should be doing, but life has a funny way of popping up and kind of altering your life's course no matter what you decide. And yes, you are still very young. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much to the three of you for providing your time on what is probably your busiest day of the year. Aoife Walsh, John Walsh and Colette Harrison for contributing those insights to our podcast. And that's all we have time for this time. And I hope you have all enjoyed it, and I'd like to wish all the listeners, whether you're students or parents, good wishes for whatever options you did receive today, and join us the next time when we'll be looking at life in college during COVID. And don't forget, the National Parents Council helpline is open now with guidance counsellors for you, 1800 265 165, and this will be on independent.ie, and of course plenty of coverage in the Irish Independent.
The Going to College Education Podcast from the Irish Independent in association with Quality and Qualifications Ireland, QQI, promoting quality and accountability in Irish education and training.